Hi everyone, Robert Villanueva here. Today I want to talk to you about the power of pre-qual. Now, what am I talking about pre-qualification? The purpose of this, of course, we obviously have the side of the buyers, getting them pre-qualified, making sure that we are working with buyers that are ready to go. But have you ever considered pre-qualifying from a seller's perspective? Now, what do I mean by that? Let me give you an example. Before you go to a dentist, a doctor, what are they doing? In most cases, they're pre-qualifying you. What do I mean by that? Well, if you're going to their office for the very, very first time, before they actually put you into a waiting room, they're asking you to fill out this form, send us this information, bring 2 forms of ID, bring payment, insurance card, all that other stuff. And before you even go into the doctor's waiting room, they're already filling out all of this, they're going over the information you just filled out. They finally put you into the waiting room for the doctor, and then what does the nurse do? They're pre-qualifying you even further. They're taking your vitals, they're taking your weight, they're looking at your blood pressure, all that other stuff. And then finally the doctor comes in. What does the doctor do? Further pre-qualifies you. Medical history, are you allergic to anything? All of this other stuff. Those are the truest forms, in a sense, that we all consider to be professionals. Why don't you treat your business the exact same way? Well, going back to the real estate side of things, what do I mean by that? Well, if you're in a position, you pre-qualify a seller, you're looking at your competition isn't doing this. You're already separating yourself from the competition. 90, 95, even 99% of the realtors aren't pre-qualifying. There's a couple of factors, there's a couple of benefits that come into play when you're doing pre-qualification. Number one is you're looking at separating yourself from the rest of the competition because they're not doing it. Number two, how about identifying their motivation? Now, I'm not talking about you spoke to them yesterday, the day before, and they said, hey, I'm thinking about making a move to Arizona. Coach, hey, they're thinking about making a move to Arizona. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is identifying why they're making that move to Arizona. What's the benefit of making this move to Arizona? How is this move going to impact their family, their lifestyle? These are questions that are going to help you in regards to identifying that motivation. Third thing is, how about identifying the condition, or for that matter, objections in advance? Now think about it. You're going to go on a listing presentation today, tomorrow, the next day. If you pre-qualify them and have all of this information at the ready, it's kind of like taking a test, yet you already know what the questions are going to consist of. So you have all the answers. That's the benefit, of course, of pre-qualifying. Identify their motivation. Get to know whether they have any conditions, any objections, anything that's going to come up. In the pre-qualification, you're going to ask a series of questions. How about knowing if you're going to have competition? Are they going to interview any other realtors? How much are they looking at selling or wanting to sell their home for? What's a price they would not want to go below? There's a series of questions, and you guys all know that I'm in a position where obviously I prefer to focus on the Mike Ferry scripts. So the Mike Ferry pre-qual presentation basically goes through these series of questions that I'm going to encourage you to ask. The next level, though, isn't just the 10 questions that are in there. It's the question between the questions. Now, I don't want you to turn this thing into 20, 25, 30 questions you're going to go through before you meet with them. You don't want to go through that perspective, but you want to ask questions after the questions that Mike already provides us. What do I mean by that? Well, let's think of the very first question right out the gate. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if what I say makes sense and you feel absolutely comfortable and you feel absolutely confident that I can sell your home, are you planning on listing your home with me? And they say no. Well, then what's the benefit of me coming out? Right out the gate, you're going to know whether or not it's going to be worthy of going forward. Or every once in a while, you're going to get somebody that's going to say, well, we're thinking about possibly refinancing. Wouldn't it be great to know that in advance before you set everything up, prepare your CMA packet, wear your nicest suit, your nicest tie, get everything prepared, and then drive 30, 45 minutes, meet with them for 30, 45 minutes, try to convince them to sell their home when they're not even thinking about it? How about the second question? Are you planning to interview more than one agent for the job of selling your home? I don't know. I think that that's a great question. Why? How many times have you gone to a presentation, you sit down, you put your best foot forward, and at the very end, they say things along the line of, hey, Robert, I really appreciate all the information. I think you're a great agent. You did a great job on the presentation. However, we have a couple of other people we want to talk to. Now you find yourself in a position of, man, I wish I would have known this. You can do the exact same thing with every other one. I also mentioned about the questions between the questions. What do I mean by that? As an example, I asked them the question, tell me again, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, where exactly are you moving to? Well, we're moving to Arizona. Interesting. What part of Arizona are you moving to? Well, we're thinking about Phoenix. Great. Is there any specific part of Phoenix or any specific city that you're looking for? Well, we're thinking about, Surprise. Well, that's awesome. What's the benefit of making this move? How will this move impact you and your family? Why is this move so important? Who's most looking forward to making this move? You can ask questions that's going to further enhance this. So I want you to think about that. The power of pre-qualification is exactly that. You're going to have all of that information in advance, so that way I haven't even gone to the presentation yet. So now when I go to the presentation, I'm going to be better equipped, better prepared, better suited so that I can go through my entire presentation. Now let's talk about pre-qualifying from a perspective of when. Ideally, you're going to want to pre-qualify at least one day in advance. That's the most ideal thing. I get it. Sometimes you're on the phone 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, you set an appointment for that 5 o'clock later that afternoon. Pre-qualify them as quickly as you possibly can. But in an ideal situation, you're going to want to pre-qualify them in advance. Now here's another benefit, another caveat. If you have an assistant, I'm going to encourage you to actually have your assistant do the pre-qualification. Why? Because it takes the emotion out of it. It gives you just the facts. Now, I'm not telling you not to further that conversation. What I'm getting at is that your assistant goes through, pre-qualifies the seller, gets all of the information on there, going back using the exact same example. I'm going to call back and confirm and now say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, thank you so much. I'm really excited and looking forward to meeting you guys later on today at 5 o'clock. I just want to make sure that that 5 o'clock is still going to work for us. Perfect. Now, the other thing is I want to take a minute to say thank you because you answered all the questions that my assistant asked you yesterday. But I did want to ask you a couple of other questions that you had mentioned based on those questions. Now, you had mentioned that you're looking at interviewing 2 other realtors besides myself. Just out of curiosity, besides the 3 realtors, is there any other realtors you're considering, or do you feel as if though after interviewing 3 realtors, will that be enough? This helps you further add value to the pre-qualification. Okay. So what I'm getting at is if you are in a position, you have an assistant, don't hesitate to have your assistant do the pre-qualification. I mean, think about it. Going back to the dentist or doctor, is the doctor giving you a call and simply saying, hey, Robert, you're coming in tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Before I see you tomorrow at 5 o'clock, I'm going to ask you a series of questions. That's not what takes place. Usually their staff does all of that. So think about that. There's a little bit of efficiency, takes away the emotion as to the responses, and then it gives you another reason why to, of course, follow up with them so that you can call back, confirm, and further ask more questions based on the information that was provided to you. So these are some benefits. I'm not going to go through every single last one of them, but there's a couple more points that I want to cover. So now let's talk about the agents that don't pre-qualify. Okay, so let's look at it from the other side of the perspective. What are we dealing with? So these are the agents that basically set the appointment and they just show up. Is it the end of the world? No, it's not the end of the world. But I will tell you this, the agents that do that, they find themselves in a position where they lack confidence. I mean, think about that. The last time that you went out and did a presentation, you didn't pre-qualify, you went out there, you were hoping, you were praying that everything would line up and you said, I need this listing, I want to take this listing. And at the end of the presentation, as great as you did, as it turns out that they're really not as motivated as you thought that they were. That's again, not going through the pre-qualification process. So now you're wasting extra time. The other thing separate from, of course, is not just the wasting of time. It's these agents go through this kind of discovery process. It makes your presentation longer. Instead of being in and out of a listing presentation in about 20, 25, maybe even 30 minutes at most of these people are taking 45 minutes, an hour and 15, heck, even 2 hours sitting down in a presentation because they're trying to go through this discovery process because they didn't pre-qualify the day before or the day of. So now they're spending more time in trying to find this information and just being in that position to just simply waste time. Another thing is these agents will have a tendency of overpricing homes. Okay? We've all been there. We've all taken that listing, it's overpriced. Well, don't be that agent that does it listing after listing after listing because you didn't prepare thoroughly based on the information. Now, another thing is that you'll find yourself, because we don't get paid by the hour, that your hourly rate, what you're worth, starts to go down. Because now instead of doing a 30-minute presentation, now you're doing a 2-hour presentation. And you find yourself in that position where you're just not being as efficient as you possibly can. Now, the other thing is being in a position where these agents don't have a lot of appointments, okay? And I get that. I see from a coach's perspective all the time where these agents, they'll go through 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, and then bam, finally I got a listing appointment. And the last thing you want to do is be in a position where you go through and you pre-qualify them and come to find out they're not even serious. This is typical of a realtor that does not pre-qualify. So if you consider yourself a professional, this is something that I'm going to encourage you to look into so that you can better your listing appointment to listing taken ratio. Another point I want to make is in regards to our ratios, basically with what I just talked about, listing appointment to listing taken ratios. True professionals going on 10 listing presentations, in most cases they're coming back with as many as 7, even 8 contracts. That's 70 to 80%. If you're not getting this ratio, I should say, if you're not getting that ratio, it's likely because you're not pre-qualifying. It's likely because you're going into the position of, trying to convince these people. Another thing that's really important, one of my personal favorite sayings is basically knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. What do I mean by that? Is the more knowledge you have as an individual, the more you know about the seller, the more you know about the client, their wants, their needs, their desires, with what it is that they want to accomplish, it's gonna put you in a position of having that knowledge, which gives me the power, which of course puts me in a position of becoming a way better presenter. Now, last but not least, the last thing I want you to do is be in a position where you're just wasting your time, okay? The pre-qualification process is simply about that. You're eliminating the people that are the looky-loos, the I'll think about it, the I'm just wanting to refi, I just want to know the value of my home. So as a true professional, you don't want to be in that position. So hopefully this was helpful. Again, Robert Villanueva here. I'm always here to be of some help. I'll see you at the top.